In 1876, Wyoming Territory, in the unforgiving frontier town of Dustwood, a woman returns from exile, accused of a crime she didn't commit. Eleanor Blythe faces whispers of betrayal, a sheriff haunted by regret, and a town that refuses to forget. But beneath the dust and sorrow lies a story of love, redemption, and the unbreakable threads of destiny. Will Eleanor clear her name and reclaim her life? Join us on this gripping journey through heartbreak, courage, and slow-burning romance, where every stitch in time could change a life forever. Subscribe now and dive into Threads of Destiny, a tale of love at last, set against the wild, wild west. Dust swirled across the wooden planks of Dustwood's main street as a stagecoach creaked into town. Inside sat a woman with steel in her spine and pain etched on her face. Eleanor Blythe, 26, cloaked in navy blue with a bonnet hiding auburn curls. It had been 8 years. 8 years since they called her a thief. Since the sheriff's cold hands had clamped iron cuffs on her wrists. Since she'd been cast out, shunned by the very town that once called her one of their own. Now she was back, not for revenge, but survival. With nothing left in Cheyenne but a trunk full of hand-stitched gowns and a sewing needle, she came to open a dress shop or die trying. People watched as she stepped onto the dusty ground. Silence. Whispers. The name, Eleanor, floated like a ghost. And then he appeared. Sheriff Callum Rourke. Still tall, still broad, still solemn-eyed. The man who once loved her, and the man who condemned her. Their eyes met. His jaw clenched. Her throat tightened. The past hadn't stayed buried. It waited in Dustwood, sharp as broken glass. Callum Rourke hadn't expected to see her again, not ever, and especially not here. Yet there she was, standing under the same swinging sign of the general store, the very place where the silver brooch went missing all those years ago. Eleanor Blythe. The name felt like ash in his mouth. She hadn't changed much, only aged by sorrow. Her gaze was still bold, though shadowed now, framed by lashes too long to be innocent and lips too proud to beg. The townsfolk scattered, pretending to mind their business. But Callum didn't move. He stood rooted in place, the weight of a tin star heavy against his chest. "Sheriff," she greeted flatly. Her voice was honey-dipped steel. "Eleanor," he replied. It was all he could manage. He hadn't said her name aloud in nearly a decade. "You gonna arrest me again?" she asked, loud enough for a few gasps to rise. He felt the burn of every eye on them. "No," he said, "unless you give me reason." She nodded once. "Then I'll be opening my dress shop where the old bakery used to be." "You won't be welcomed," he said. "I'm not here for welcome," she said. "I'm here for truth." The sign above the old bakery creaked in the wind as Eleanor pried the door open. The place was layered in dust and cobwebs. But it would do. She dropped her trunk with a thud and looked around. Rotten floorboards, cracked window panes, faded memories. She lit a lantern and opened the trunk. Inside were her tools. Needles, threads in every shade, bolts of fabric wrapped with care, and a pair of silver shears that had once belonged to her mother. With trembling fingers, she unfolded a half-finished dress, a symbol of dreams paused, not broken. By noon, she'd swept the floors and hung a single hand-stitched curtain. She placed a sign in the window, "Blythe's Dressmaking and Repairs. Open soon." Outside, whispers stirred like dry leaves. Is that her? After what she did? Who would buy a gown from a thief? But Eleanor didn't flinch. She sat at her table and began to sew. Every stitch was a defiance, every hem a whispered vow. Then came the knock. She opened the door to find a small girl, no older than 12, clutching a torn dress and a copper penny. "Can you fix it?" the girl asked. Eleanor smiled. "I can fix anything." The little girl stood nervously, her freckled cheeks flushed from the afternoon sun. "It's my Sunday dress," she said. "Mama says we can't afford a new one, but I heard you were back." Eleanor knelt, her hands gentle as she took the frayed blue fabric from the child's arms. "What's your name, sweet one?" "Lottie Mae," she whispered. "I'm 10. You really ain't gonna steal from us." Eleanor paused. The words stung like nettles, but she didn't show it. "No, Lottie Mae, I came to sew, not to steal." The child looked down. Mama says you were framed. That it wasn't you who took that brooch. Framed. The word was like a bomb, rare and precious. Eleanor gave a small, grateful smile. Your mama's a smart woman. She set to work, and within minutes, the fabric was reborn. The tear vanished beneath her practiced hand, and Eleanor hummed a tune her mother once sang by candlelight. When Lottie Mae saw the finished stitch, her eyes lit up. It's like magic. Just a needle and thread, Eleanor said, her heart warming. The girl hugged her, then ran off with the dress fluttering behind. Outside, the sheriff watched, and remembered. Callum stood in his dim office, staring at the town ledger. Dustwood's official records lined the shelves, births, deaths, arrests. His fingers hovered over one page dated 8 years back. Blythe, Eleanor. Theft of personal property. Silver brooch, heirloom, belonging to Mrs. Constance Willoughby. Arrested March 3rd, 1868. Case closed. He had scrawled that note himself. He remembered Eleanor's trembling hands, her whispered denials, the disbelief in her tear-filled eyes. And yet, he'd followed the law. Her name had been dragged to the mud before she could even plead her case. Why was she back? Pride? Revenge? Redemption? He sighed and leaned back, the creak of the chair filling the quiet. Outside, Dustwood buzzed with speculation. Then he saw a flash of blue dress running down the street. Lottie Mae, her patched hem danced in the wind, Eleanor's stitches holding firm. The townsfolk might remember the scandal, but the children didn't care about gossip. They cared about kindness. And Eleanor had always had plenty of that. Callum stared out the horizon, troubled. He wasn't sure if he was protecting the town from Eleanor, or protecting himself from the truth, because deep down he wasn't sure she was ever guilty. That evening, the wind whispered to the cracked windows of Eleanor's new shop. She sat by the flickering candlelight, sewing late into the night. Each stitch brought memories, a promise made long ago, before shadows claimed her name. Suddenly, a slow knock broke the silence. She froze. Eleanor? The voice was low, cautious, familiar. Callum stepped inside, the weight of years pressing down on him. I wanted to see if you were truly back. She didn't rise. And he looked around the shop, the delicate fabrics, the neat rows of thread. You've built something here. She met his eyes. Why now, Callum? After all these years. His gaze softened. Because I never stopped believing you were innocent. A silence hung heavy between them, filled with things left unsaid. The past wasn't just a shadow. It was a wall between them. But tonight, in the quiet glow of the candlelight, a fragile hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, the threads of their destiny were ready to be rewoven. Callum's eyes held a storm of regret as he stepped closer, the sheriff's badge heavy on his chest, but lighter than the burden in his heart. I should have believed you, Eleanor. I should have fought harder. Her breath caught, the old wounds aching anew. You didn't fight for me. You arrested me. I was blinded by what I thought was justice, he admitted, voice breaking. But I never stopped loving you. Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes, tears she buried deep beneath years of pain and exile. Love, she whispered, disbelief shaking her. Love doesn't chain a woman and throw away the key. His hands clenched, trembling. I was a fool. I see that now, but I want to make it right. Her voice cracked, raw and fragile. Can you undo the years of lies? The nights I cried alone? The way this town spat on my name? Callum swallowed hard. No, but I can stand with you now. If you'll have me. The weight of silence between them was heavy. Two broken souls, tangled in past hurts, wondering if love could survive the unraveling. Just as Eleanor's heart dared to soften, a sharp rap echoed at the door. It was Jonas, the town's oldest barkeep, known for his sharp tongue and sharper gossip. Sheriff, you might want to hear this, Jonas said, face grim. Callum frowned. What now? Jonas lowered his voice. There's talk the brooch wasn't stolen by Eleanor at all. It's been found, hidden in Mrs. Willoughby's own parlor. Some say she planted it to cover her own debts. Eleanor's breath hitched. Years of shame, pain, and exile suddenly blurred with betrayal deeper than she'd imagined. Callum's eyes darkened. "Why didn't you come forward, Eleanor?" "I had no proof," she whispered. "And no one believed me." The room felt colder, the walls closing in. The truth was a bitter blade, sharp enough to cut the past, but cruel enough to leave scars. "I'm sorry," Callum said, voice barely audible. "I failed you." Eleanor looked away, tears streaming silently. "The past can't be undone, Callum. But maybe we can still write a new story." Outside, the wind howled, carrying the weight of secrets long buried. The days that followed were heavy with whispers and glances, but Eleanor found unexpected solace in her work. She stitched not just fabric, but hope into every seam, each dress a small rebellion against the past. Callum visited often, bringing her supplies or simply standing quietly in the doorway, unsure of how to bridge the gulf between them. One evening, as twilight bathed the town in soft hues, Eleanor paused her sewing. "Why do you stay, Callum?" He met her gaze, steady and raw. "Because I believe in what we lost, and maybe what we could still have." Her fingers trembled, the fragile hope stirring in her chest. "Forgiveness doesn't come easy." "No," he said softly, "but I'm willing to wait for as long as it takes." The past was a tangle of pain and mistakes. But slowly, beneath the dust and sorrow, new threads began to weave their way toward healing. Just as Eleanor began to believe in a future where the past might be forgiven, a new storm brewed on Dustwood's horizon. A letter arrived, marked with a heavy seal, from Constance Willoughby's brother, a wealthy and powerful man with a grudge. He demanded the town reopen the case, accusing Eleanor of theft and deception, threatening legal action and ruin. The whispers returned, sharper and colder. Callum's jaw tightened. "We can't let him ruin everything." Eleanor's hands clenched the letter, heart pounding. The fragile piece she'd found threatened to shatter beneath the weight of old enemies. "Then we fight," she said quietly, "for truth, for justice." Callum nodded, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. Together. But as the town watched, their story and their hearts would face the greatest test yet. The town hall was packed, every seat filled with Dustwood's residents. Curious, judgmental, and some quietly supportive. The air was thick with tension as Constance Willoughby's brother, Mr. Harold Pierce, demanded justice. "Miss Blythe is a thief," Pierce proclaimed. "This town cannot harbor criminals." Callum stepped forward, voice steady but firm. "We've looked into the matter. New evidence shows Miss Blythe was innocent all along." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some skeptical, others hopeful. Eleanor felt eyes burning into her, some cold, some warm. A few townsfolk stepped forward, quietly pledging support, Lottie Mae's family among them. But not all were convinced. Old grudges die hard. Pierce's gaze was icy, vowing to ruin her if she didn't leave town immediately. Callum's hand brushed hers beneath the table. "We'll face this side by side." For the first time in years, Eleanor felt the threads of destiny beginning to intertwine, weaving a new tapestry of trust, courage, and maybe, just maybe, love. That night, Eleanor sat alone by the fading firelight, the weight of the day pressing down on her. The faces in the town hall replayed endlessly in her mind, some condemning, some hopeful. A soft knock startled her. Callum entered, boots dusty, eyes tired but unwavering. "I should have told you sooner," he said, settling beside her. "The reason I hesitated back then, it wasn't just the law. It was fear." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "Fear," he nodded, "of losing you, of breaking what little trust we had." Her heart ached. "You broke it anyway." His hand found hers, rough but gentle. "And I want to mend it. I know it won't be easy, but you're worth every fight." Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "I've dreamed of hearing those words for years." They sat in silence, two souls scarred but willing to try, tied together by pain, hope, and the fragile threads of forgiveness. The next morning, Eleanor found a small package left at her shop's doorstep, a bundle tied with faded ribbon. Inside was a bundle of letters, old and brittle, addressed to her in handwriting she hadn't seen in years. They were from her mother, written during the time of her exile, hidden away by a trusted friend. Her hands trembled as she read the words, her mother's desperate pleas, explaining how Constance Willoughby had framed her to cover debts and save her own reputation. A single sentence echoed in Eleanor's mind. "Truth will out, my dear. Hold fast to hope." With renewed determination, Eleanor knew her fight wasn't just for herself anymore. It was for justice, and for the legacy stolen from her family. Callum found her tears when he came to check on her, and this time, there was no need for words. Together, they understood that their battle was far from over, but they would face it united. Word of the letter spread quickly through Dustwood, shifting the town's mood like a sudden spring thaw. Some who had once shunned Eleanor now offered cautious smiles and whispered apologies. At the saloon, old rivals nodded respectfully, while neighbors dropped off small gifts, bolts of fabric, jars of honey, fresh eggs. Eleanor stood by her shop window, watching the town come alive with newfound hope. Beside her, Callum's steady presence was a comforting anchor, but victory felt fragile, as if the wind could snatch it away at any moment. "Don't let your guard down," Callum warned softly. "Pierce won't back down easily." She nodded, her gaze fierce. "Neither will I." For the first time in years, Eleanor felt the threads of her life weaving into a tapestry of purpose, courage, and the possibility of love finally blooming from the ashes. Dustwood's annual harvest festival brought a rare moment of celebration. Lanterns glowed softly, music floated on the cool autumn air, and townsfolk gathered in colorful dresses and polished boots. Eleanor stood quietly near the edge of the dance floor, a simple but elegant gown she'd sewn herself hugging her frame. Callum approached, extending his hand with a shy smile. "May I have this dance?" For a moment, Eleanor hesitated, the old wounds flickering in her mind. Then she placed her hand in his, stepping into the circle of light. As they danced, laughter and music swirling around them, years of pain seemed to melt away. In his eyes, she saw not the sheriff who once condemned her, but the man who had never stopped believing in her. But in the shadows, a pair of cold eyes watched Mr. Pierce, simmering with rage, plotting his next move to tear them apart. The dance was a fragile moment of joy, but the storm was far from over. The morning after the festival, Eleanor woke to find her shop's windows shattered. Glass scattered like fallen stars across the wooden floor. A threatening note lay pinned beneath a heavy stone. "Leave Dustwood, or suffer the consequences." Her hands trembled as she read, but her spirit burned brighter than fear. Callum arrived moments later, fury flashing in his eyes. "This stops now. I swear, whoever did this will answer to me." Eleanor swallowed her dread. "They want to break me, to make me leave." He took her hands firmly. "They won't. We'll face this together." For the first time, the line between past and present blurred. Their fight for justice was no longer just about clearing her name. It was about survival, about protecting the fragile hope growing between them. The threads of destiny were tightening, pulling them toward a future forged in love and courage. The town gathered in the square as Callum confronted Mr. Harold Pierce, who stood defiantly, surrounded by his hired men. "You've terrorized this town long enough," Callum declared, voice ringing with authority. "Leave Dustwood or face the law." Pierce sneered, but the crowd's murmurs grew louder, siding with Eleanor and Callum. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I am not running from lies or threats. I belong here." The sheriff's badge gleamed in the fading sun as justice finally found its mark. Pierce, realizing his grip had slipped, turned and vanished into the night, defeated but unbroken. Dustwood exhaled, the heavy weight of fear lifting. For Eleanor and Callum, it was a moment of triumph, but also a fragile promise of what might come next. With the threat gone, Dustwood slowly returned to peace. Eleanor's dress shop flourished, the townsfolk embracing her not as a stranger, but as one of their own. Callum and Eleanor grew closer, the walls between them crumbling with each shared smile and quiet moment. One evening, beneath a sky painted with stars, Callum took Eleanor's hands in his. "I've waited years for this, to tell you I love you." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "And I've waited just as long to hear it." The past, with all its pain and sorrow, was behind them. Their hearts, once torn apart, were now woven together, stronger and more beautiful than ever. In the quiet of the frontier night, Two souls found a love they'd long been destined to share. The first light of dawn spilled over Dustwood, casting golden hues on the wooden storefronts and open plains. Eleanor stood outside her shop, the warm breeze catching the hem of her new dress, one she had sewn with love and hope. Callum joined her, his hand sliding gently into hers. Together, they watched as the town stirred awake, alive with promise and renewal. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we face it side by side." She smiled, her heart full. Together, the past had tried to break them, but love and forgiveness had sewn their souls anew. In the vast, wild frontier, two hearts beat as one, woven tightly by the threads of destiny. And at last they were home. Eleanor and Callum's story is one of forgiveness, hope, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. In a town scarred by lies and betrayal, two hearts find a new beginning, woven together by destiny's hand. If you were moved by their journey, don't forget to like, comment, and share this story with fellow romance lovers. Subscribe for more captivating historical romances and timeless tales from the frontier. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a chapter, and let love's threads guide you home. Drop where you are watching from in the comment section. Thanks for watching.